We're so excited to have you guys here today. It is such an honor to be able to speak to grandparents because you provide such a different and important part of support for your adult child as well as your grandchild. So our presentation, we want you to know that we're here to answer your questions today. If you have specific questions about your grandchild or how you can help, questions about what their diagnoses mean, that is what we want to be able to provide you today. So you'll have plenty of time for that at the end. Everyone should have received a really cute invitation to this event with a gift card for some coffee. So I hope you're enjoying some coffee today. If you didn't receive that, you will email me your address and information. We will get one out to you, and this PowerPoint will be sent to everyone who registered. So because there are some links in the PowerPoint that you may want to reference later. So you'll have my email address as well as lots of links for other information. And I think that is it. Back to Lily.
All right. So we are so excited that you guys are here, and it's fun to see everyone's faces on the screen. And I'm, sitting here trying to figure out whose grandparents belong to which grandchild. And some of them, the last names, I can get it figured out. So I really wish we could have done this in person because I just really miss just the interaction of the being in person and having those conversations and that kind of thing. So when we get towards the end and we're talking about questions that you guys may have, please share with us who your grandchild is so that, I know a lot of these kiddos because I've been in a lot of these classrooms. And so they bring me such joy. So I definitely would like to know who you belong to. But, we think, I know this is a presentation that has been done for grandparents in the past. And, one of our own parish employees, parish staff is also a grandparent and not of a current student here, but just of a grandparent with, a child that might be struggling with some special needs or a disability. And so, I think it's really important that you guys have questions and want to know, what can we do to support our grandchild? What can we learn? How can we learn more about what our grandchild might be experiencing? So we thought it would be important to kind of start with some common questions that grandparents of children with special needs might have. These are questions that were brought to us from our grandparent at Parish, as well as questions that were that had been brought up in these past grandparent coffee chats in previous years. So some of those questions that you might have, might be, how do I support my adult child that has a child with special needs? How do I talk to my adult child about my concerns with my grandchild's development or needs? So you might see some things in your grandchild that, that just seem a little bit different, and wondering how to talk to your adult child about that. How do I navigate and advocate for the parents of my grandchild amongst the rest of the family? You might notice, that your adult child's siblings might not quite understand what's going on, and trying to figure out how to help your adult child navigate that and share that information. How can I make accommodations to help support my adult child or grandchild during family functions? So that your grandchild is needing some special accommodations. How can you do that within your home or within your family functions in a way that is helpful to your grandchild and to your adult child? How can I support my grandchild's needs when I spend time with them? And I think this is a big one, because being the grandparents, that means you are also parents. And being parents, you are always wanting for your adult children to be okay, and that includes your adult children's family. So what will my grandchild's future look like? Might be a good a question that might be on your mind. Now, we're going to address some basic ways that you can help support your adult child and build a positive, meaningful relationship with your grandchild. But in looking at all these questions, I felt like they could really be divided into two separate categories. And one is, how do I provide that love and support to my adult child? And then the second category kind of being, how do I provide that love and support and build that positive, meaningful relationship with my grandchild? So we've kind of divided just some general suggestions about what you guys as grandparents can do into those two different categories. So showing my love and support to my adult child. And so this is the parent of a child with special needs. And so these are just some general ideas, and definitely if you have questions about them, we can definitely help address or answer or provide more specific ideas in particular to your specific grandchild. But learn about your grandchild's disability and needs. This would include asking your adult child to provide you with information about what the child's disability is, what the child needs. It could be asking professionals. So in the professionals that your grandchild might see, it might be asking those professionals, if parents are willing, might be going to some of those appointments with your adult child where you can hear some of that information from the professionals that is working with your grandchild. Be open to new and different ways of parenting. So you guys parented and raised your children well and modeled how to parent to your adult child. And so chances are your adult child has used, because that's what they were taught in being raised by you, has used the strategies for parenting that you have shared with them via parenting them. And a lot of times your adult child may have found that those strategies, those parenting methods that they were raised with don't seem to work with their child with special needs. And many times, once they've hit that point, now they're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I change how I parent to manage this child in a way that's effective and successful? And so they may be trying out lots of different ideas and suggestions that they're getting from the professionals that they're working with. And so one way to really show support to that adult child is to kind of respect them trying those new parenting methods and strategies so that they feel supported by you, because chances are the things that you have shared with them or that they have been raised with just don't seem to be doing the trick for them. And sometimes it's a hard business of, trying to figure out what strategy works for one particular child, especially when they have multiple children in the household. And it's like the things they were raised with work great for the other kids, but for this one child, it doesn't. And so they're trying to figure out how to navigate that within their household. So some of the ideas might be new and unconventional, but that adult child might be really just needing your support and knowing that it's okay to try these new things. Accept your grandchild's disability. So when a parent has a child with special needs, that parent themselves are going through probably a lot of grief of how they thought it would be. I'm sure when you think back to when you were having your first child or your second child, and you have all these dreams, aspirations, thoughts about what that child is going to end up being, about what your family might look like, about what family dinners might look like, about what holidays would look like. And so your adult child experiences that same thing, but then they end up with a child with special needs, and it doesn't go that way at all. All of their aspirations, dreams, thoughts about how it would be all of a sudden are really different. And so there's a part of them that's grieving that. And that also goes for you guys as grandparents. So allow yourself kind of the time to grieve how you thought it was going to be. Maybe you had thoughts about what you would do with your grandchild, and about what those family functions, with the extended family would look like. And when you have a child with special needs, sometimes it looks dramatically different than what you thought it would be. And so it's really important as grandparents to the parents are grieving, and it's also really important for grandparents to allow themselves the time to grieve, and know that it's okay to feel a sense of loss, that this is really different than how you thought it would be. And by allowing yourself to kind of grieve, then you're kind of opening up. You're kind of connected with the parent and also knowing kind of what they're going through. But then you're also allowing yourself to open up and really be supportive as the parent kind of goes through that grief journey, and know that it's, that it's different, and that it's okay that it's different, and that we can still get to a point where you have that, that connection and relationship with your grandchild, just in a different way than you thought it would be before. Give practical help when possible. And this doesn't have to be financial help. It can be, and I'm sure our parents definitely appreciate it. But practical help doesn't always have to be financial help. It could be offering respite services, taking care of the child with special needs, or the siblings of the child with special needs, but just providing respite so the parents can have a break, because a lot of times it is a lot of time and energy that the parent is spending trying to take care of their child with special needs. So offering respite services, offering chauffeuring services. Sometimes some of our parents really appreciate having their grandparents be able to drive the children or the child with special needs to therapy appointments or doctor appointments, whether it's that child or the other siblings. Sometimes our families have a lot of appointments with lots of different doctors and specialties, and they're trying to figure out how to get this child here and that child there, and multiple days per week. So that's another idea, is offering some chauffeuring services around. And then giving emotional and or spiritual support. So this I think can kind of go along with some of the practical help, is also just providing, recognizing your adult child for how hard they're working at parenting this child with special needs, giving them compliments on their parenting, providing care packages to your adult child and their spouse, so that they can do something to kind of help take care of themselves. There's so much time and energy that's spent taking care of that child with special needs, that sometimes they neglect to kind of take care of their own just mental health or spiritual health or emotional health. So care packages for them. One idea I saw was giving a gift card to that adult child and or their spouse, and a gift card to a store where they can't buy something for their child. A lot of times, that parent might be like, oh yes, a gift card. Now I can, put that towards my child's thing. And it's again, they're kind of putting their child, as a priority, which makes them amazing parents. But sometimes they don't take care of just their wishes and their desires, because they're putting their child first. So that's one way to help provide that emotional, spiritual support, is to give them that gift card, but to a place where they can't put their child first and they have to do something for themselves. So those are just a few ideas. I feel like I might be missing one, but I can't see my PowerPoint, because I'm trying to move the little box of faces. Okay, that was all of them. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So those are just a few ideas about being able to show that your adult child, what you can do to kind of help them feel loved and supported from you while they're parenting their child with special needs. And then showing my love and support to my grandchild. So, you know, sometimes, again, you might have thoughts about what your relationship with your grandchild might look like. And of course, you've had the experience of what your relationship with your child when they were young children look like, and what it's kind of supposed to look like, probably. And then you have this child with special needs, and it's, you know, not quite going in that direction. And you might not be sure how to connect with them or how to respond to them, because they might not necessarily be giving the same responses that you were getting from your children when they were younger, or even from your other grandchildren that don't have special needs. They might not be giving you those same responses. And so these are just some short ideas that you can build upon to kind of help build up that positive relationship with your grandchild with special needs. And one of them is enter your grandchild's world. So find out kind of what their interests are, or what their current interests are. And, you know, some of our students have, you know, some might call it like very, I'm trying to think of the right word, but just very like almost obsessive interests, or it's just the same thing all the time over and over again. And so if you're not sure usually they'll show you pretty easily, because it's usually the only thing they might want to talk about. But if you're not sure, you know, ask your adult child, you know, what are they kind of focused on right now? What do they like to play and talk about? And talk about that with them. You know, it might not necessarily be your favorite cup of tea. We have one kiddo who loves, you know, Peppa. Some of our kiddos, or some of the kiddos I've worked with in the past, love Thomas, the train characters, you know, and everything becomes a Peppa or everything becomes a Thomas. But just being able to engage in that conversation with them, all of a sudden they're feeling, oh, like, you know, this person also loves Peppa and Thomas, and now I'm gonna like show them what my world is all about. And then they're going to be more engaged with you in that process, because they're like, oh, like you like Peppa too? All right, I'm gonna start, you know, coming to hang out with you a little bit, because I know that you like some Peppa. So enter your grandchild's world, find out what their interests are, play with them and talk with them on those interests. A lot of times they'll pull you into their play and give you those assigned roles from their favorite cartoons, you know, and sometimes they might have very specific ideas on how they want you to play with them in that role. And sometimes they're willing to like let you change it up a little bit on them, but just letting them kind of, you know, give you those roles and being willing to accept those roles and those interests is very helpful for them to kind of invite you in and want to hang out and play with you some more. Create special routines and rituals that are specific to you and your special needs grandchild. So routines and rituals, we're all about routines and rituals here at Parish. We have visual daily schedules that tells the kids basically what to predict, what to expect, and that helps create a sense of safety for them. And so that's something that you can also implement into your relationship with your grandchild, is having just a specific routine or ritual between you and them that kind of gives them a sense of, okay, I know to expect and predict this every time. And that will help kind of increase that sense of safety and helping them feel comfortable and safe and just kind of know what to expect during their time with you. And that might be like an example would be if you're talking to your grandchild on the phone, it might be like a funny way to say goodbye and end the phone conversation every time, or a funny way to say hello and goodbye. It might be a special handshake that they do with you, like a special greeting every time they see you and before you say goodbye. Trying to think of, different ideas. Like, so I think, sometimes some of our staff will have like, we call them like greeting aprons or greeting choice boards. And the kids can choose like a high five, a hug. So it might be having your own special one with your grandchild that they can really look forward to. Maybe you combine their favorite interest or cartoon character into the greeting. For example, I have someone I know likes Little Rascals. And so their special greeting is the Little Rascal wave and takes kind of that interest and turns it into a greeting. And it's something that they do every single time they see each other. And it just creates that meaningful bond for them. Set aside special time for your special needs grandchild. So a lot of our students, a lot of our kiddos, they have a hard time kind of being in a group or being in a larger group. They are not their best selves in some of those situations. And so trying to connect or engage with them at large family functions, at places that have a lot of stimulation that tend to overstimulate them, might be really hard for them to kind of connect with you in those moments. So taking some time to kind of have that more of that one-on-one time where maybe it's just with that grandchild or with that grandchild and their family and not necessarily the rest of the extended family, would be super helpful in allowing them just better opportunity to be able to provide and to engage with you in that way and kind of have that relationship with you where they don't have to worry about being overstimulated or overwhelmed by the larger group. And it doesn't mean avoiding like some of the larger fun, exciting activities like the zoo or the children's museum, but maybe going on days where they have I can't think of the right word today. I apologize, guys, but where they have like days at the Children's Museum where it's they have the lights lowered. Go ahead, Mimi.
It's sensory friendly days.
Thank you.
At movie theaters and at other venues.
Yes, thank you, Mimi. That was exactly the word I was looking for. So kind of, if you're wanting to take them to some of those larger activities and events, looking for those sensory friendly days to just give them a better opportunity to have that positive experience with you. And then being present. I think for the most part, grandparents are super awesome at being present with their grandchildren, much more so than the parents usually are, because you just get to be the grandparents most of the time. But sometimes it can be really hard to be present with children that might not necessarily be as responsive. Maybe your grandchild might not necessarily be verbally responding back to you when you're speaking to them or trying to connect with them, or maybe they're just looking at their toys and not providing that eye contact that other children more easily provide. And so sometimes in those moments, it can definitely be harder to be present. And so just encouraging to kind of continue to be present in that moment with your grandchild and connecting with them, even when you think that they might not necessarily be aware of what it is aware that you are even there or aware of that you're trying to engage with them. A lot of times they can be aware. So just being present for them so that they can feel that love and support, even if they're not quite ready to show you or give you those responses. Yeah. Mimi, is there anything that you want to add on any of that?
I think you covered it really well. I know I'm going to define a few terms for you guys, and then we really want to get into your questions and what it is that you want to know from us. So here's some just common terms that you may hear about your child or your grandchild in different kind of diagnoses. So the first one is a receptive or expressive language disorder. It's often receptive and expressive language disorder. And these children are having difficulty understanding and using language. And that can come in many different forms. So it might be that their vocabulary is impoverished and they don't understand or use as much vocabulary or sentence length as other children. It might have to do with their sentence structure and their grammar. It may have to do with their social use of language. So perhaps they do understand a lot, but they have difficulty navigating social situations and kind of being social detectives and figuring out what is the appropriate response in specific social situations. So all of that would be covered under receptive and expressive language disorder. So that's a really big blanket. And the Parish School is a school for children specifically with receptive and expressive language disorders, even though many of the children also have other concomitant disorders with that. And one of those might be apraxia, or sometimes it's called dyspraxia. And that is a condition where the child may know what they want to say or what they want to do, but the message is having a hard time getting from the brain to the muscles to make that a coordinated effort. So their errors may be really inconsistent. They may be kind of clumsy. They may kind of not know where their body is in space, and they may be a kid who kind of constantly leans on you, or who just has trouble completing tasks that other grandchildren the same age really don't struggle with. And sometimes that's, they know what they want to do, they just can't quite make their body do it the way that they want to make it happen. Of course, autism is growing in prevalence every year. Autism is a huge umbrella disorder. And so many children now fall under that in various degrees, whether it's a child with what used to be known as Asperger's syndrome, where those children really have more difficult with the social use of language and social norms, or it could be a child who is really having difficulties processing sensory information. And so they may look really different than the other kids. They may clap their hands, or they may jump, or they may spin. And then sensory processing disorder is often paired with these other disorders, but can also present on its own. And when we think of our senses, we think of the 5 senses we were all taught in school, but there's actually more than that. There's proprioception, which is the feedback that our muscles and our joints get from our environment around us. There's vestibular, which is kind of our balance. And proprioception is also knowing where our body is in space. Sorry. Vestibular, which has to do with balance. And I'm not going to remember this word because it's one that I just learned recently, but it's basically it's awareness of the things that are going on inside our bodies. So things like knowing when they have to pee, or knowing when their stomach's upset and what to do with that information. Learning disabilities, again, is another really broad term, but that has to do with a child's ability to learn separate from their cognition. So a child may have completely wonderful smarts and cognitive skills, but still struggle to learn. And that's kind of the definition of a learning disability, is that there's not any kind of intellectual disability, but they still struggle to learn for various reasons. And then, of course, ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which can come across as a child being very impulsive or very verbose or very inattentive or very active. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, the big ones that we see, but I know that, you know, your grandchildren may have other diagnoses that you may have questions about, and we're happy to see if we can answer any questions about those. And then finally, the resources. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but we did kind of give a resource for each disability that we just talked about. The only one I do want to point out is the first one, and that is our Unbabbled podcast at the Parish School. We started this about 2 years ago, and we've been really successful at getting some really leading experts across the nation to talk on our podcast. So I think there's really something for everybody on that podcast. Our current episode has to do with supporting the needs of siblings with children who have disabilities. We've had a parent interview there. We've had various experts on social pragmatic disorders and learning differences and apraxia and motor learning. So there's something for everyone on Unbabbled if you want to kind of scroll through and see what's there. The rest of the links, like I said, I'm not going to talk specifically about, but you will have them and should be able to access them when we send it to you. So without further ado, Lily, if you want to stop sharing, we can see everybody again. We will open the floor to any questions that you guys have for us about just emotional needs or language and speech disorders.
Feel free to unmute and ask, or you can type it in the chat box.
So I have a question. Is there such a thing as children growing out of these disabilities or limitations?
So once most of those diagnoses are made that were on the previous page, it's not so much growing out as it is learning to deal. So it is learning to acclimate and figuring out the best way that child can learn despite their disabilities. And then in addition to that, some of those disabilities will present differently over time. So for example, a child with attention deficit disorder, when they're younger, might be really hyper, but when they get older, they might actually have really intense focuses and interests. So it can change. And then of course, ongoing therapies and intervention, and especially starting early, are going to give all the children the best outcomes for learning how to cope with these disabilities and for remediation as far as they can be remediated. So a child with autism will always have autism.
And I was going to add to that, Mimi, just you, and I don't know, you may hear, sometimes when our children get evaluated and they come back with an autism diagnosis, and then over the years, they've been in therapy and they've been, those symptoms they're getting treatment for, and the child is, really working hard, and you're seeing improvements, and they'll go get reevaluated again, and they say, oh, they don't have autism anymore. And so I think Mimi made a great point, is actually, no, they still do. They're still on that autism spectrum. They have just learned lots of strategies and ways to accommodate for their diagnosis and for their symptoms that help them be successful and more fully functional. So when the diagnosis is taken away, the reality is it's not really taken away. It just means that they have adapted in a way that it is not presenting as much of a problem as it was before. They have learned to adapt and have found strategies that work for them. Does that help? And Mimi, I feel like I interrupted you and you were going to say something else in addition.
Perfect addition to that. And I know that when I was in school, these diagnoses existed and these individuals existed. We just didn't identify them. Mm-hmm. And so I can guarantee that everyone here knows somebody who has struggled with these disabilities who's a fully functional adult today. I can guarantee it.
Hi.
Sorry, pardon me, you go first.
My grandson is Troy Redmond, and this is his first year. He's in 3rd grade, and he's dyslexic, and he absolutely loves going to school there. He was actually sad on parent-teacher conference when there was no school, and that's a rarity, but he loves going to the school there and comes home talking about it all the time and loves to tell you whatever he learned that day. Ask him anything about weather, but he loves the school. So thank you so much for all y'all do.
I'm very glad to hear that. And that is a big win in and of itself, is that the child
Mhm.
feels supported in their environment so that they do feel a love for learning and a love for school.
Yes.
Jenny, did you have a question?
I do. So my daughter does not, my grandchild is autistic. And my daughter, Margaret Davis, does not love, I mean, really doesn't want me to share that diagnosis with anyone. And then, so, I mean, when you were talking about large family functions, for example, Thanksgiving is coming up. You know, we have cousins exactly the same age who are normal kids. I mean, I struggle with what to say, what not to say to upset her, but you know, clearly there's a difference. You have any advice about, I mean, I don't know what to, I mean, to the other family members, they certainly know there's a difference, but they come short of saying, well, what actually is wrong with them, but if I don't want me to share it, it's sticky.
You know, I think having a conversation with her about what is she willing to share. So a lot of times children that are on the autism spectrum, and the funny thing is, you know, a child might get a diagnosis, but within that diagnosis, it can look so much different. So you might have two children that are on the autism spectrum, but their needs may still be, there might be some similarities, but there are also vast differences sometimes in their needs. And so sometimes she might not be comfortable sharing the specific autism diagnosis, but she might be more comfortable sharing maybe specific needs or challenges that the child has. So for example, you know, she might be more comfortable sharing, well, my child gets really overwhelmed when there are a lot of people around, and, you know, has a hard time wanting to sit and play in a group, you know, and so she might not necessarily be willing to share the diagnosis, but she might be willing to share the challenges that are unique to her child. Especially if we're coming from a place, what can we do to help at that family function so that the child's needs are being more met. So that might be a conversation that you can have with her. What challenges, what are you comfortable with me sharing, so we can figure out how to create an environment that's easier for your son or your daughter, or that kind of thing.
Great. Sorry, that probably was not of general interest, but
no, I think these are fantastic questions, and these are why we were hoping to kind of open it up and hear your specific concerns so that we can provide even more specific ways that you can help support.
And we really wanted to do this before the holidays because we knew that, you know, your situation is not unique. We're going to have these big family gatherings, and not all kids really respond well in that environment. So we want to be able to hopefully give you some tools for that.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have a question. So,
Go ahead.
I was wondering if there's any resources where we could learn some of the sign language that's being taught to our grandchildren. My grandson is 2 and somewhat verbal, but still nonverbal, and he learns a lot of things at your school. And I want to be able to understand what he is trying to communicate to me when he does come to my house for the holidays or is on FaceTime with me and things. I don't want him to start to get frustrated with that. And I'm always asking the parent, you know, well, what did he just say? And I'd like to be able to educate myself on that a little bit better.
Yeah. And talk back to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I will add a link for some American Sign Language videos and resources to the PowerPoint before we send it out.
Okay, thank you.
And that's often a strategy that's used for children while they are still learning to speak, is to supplement with sign language. If once the child can speak, they're going to speak. It's much easier to speak than to sign.
Yes.
And Levin, I saw your, absolutely, I saw your hands up, Levin family.
My question was, A couple of them. Our granddaughter is 3 years old, and when she was a year old, she was diagnosed. She began having seizures, and she, excuse me, was diagnosed with something called PCDH19, which causes many developmental problems, but it also causes epilepsy. And she takes medication twice a day, and her seizures, she hasn't had a seizure since she left the hospital 2 years ago, which is a blessing. But our son and daughter-in-law have just found out that they're pregnant again, and they're due in May. And I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to prepare the family for the changes that will come about, because Gracie has been, she is our only grandchild on both sides of the family. And, she is she is the, center of attention whenever she's with us, and loves it. Yeah. So do you have any recommendations or advice on how to there are times when I
have it, but how close to normal will he get as far as?
Lily, do you want to address that one?
I think, yeah, I was thinking of Gracie. I think, so a lot of times we use what's called social stories in here. And Gracie's really on the young side, so we really have to be conscious of how much language is in a story that we're using for her. But a lot of times we use social stories to kind of help prepare children for what to expect with new situations or new social situations. So I would definitely, and our teachers are really great resources too. So if the parents are willing to reach out to the teacher, a lot of times our teachers are more than willing to help create a social story, for the child, for those upcoming changes, and that kind of thing. But social stories, and then stories or pictures. Again, I'm trying to take Gracie's really young age into mind, and probably her language struggles, but stories or pictures that kind of show what it's like to have a sibling or a baby, or what pregnancy is like as the mommy's tummy grows. So to kind of give some exposure to what that might be like. And then in addition, kind of help creating a job for Gracie for when the baby comes, to kind of help include her in the process. And the children are pretty familiar with jobs. I'm definitely happy to help work with the teacher too and help support that. It's like, what would be an appropriate job for Gracie during that transition to help be that big sister to the baby, but finding a job. And this is Gracie's job, and she can help with this. So kind of creating some jobs for her to kind of keep her into that. I think are good places to start.
I'll add on to that, Lily.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great jump start. Thank you. Is that those social stories, or that whatever it is that you're presenting to her in the manner that we're giving to you, they're going to need a lot of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
our kids, if we just could tell our kids what to do and they did it, then we'd be done, right? But they're not going to do that. We're going to need a lot of repetition with that social story. And then the other thing that I thought of is, if Gracie has an interest in that, is start doing just some caregiving, pretend play.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or a doggy who has to be burped, or has to be fed, or has to have or has to take a nap. Just
Yes.
get her used to the whole idea of there's going to be someone else in the world other than her.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Having them play out kind of with a baby doll, with a stuffed animal, with a pet, and kind of verbalizing. So, really modeling that language scaffold. So shorter phrases, words as opposed to long sentences, but scaffolding what like that means, like, oh, you gentle touches on the baby, like maybe to the baby doll, oh, kisses, you love baby, or just really to try and describe those behaviors that we would like to see, and just kind of providing the language for that as well as the expectation, but in very short scaffold phrase, like words and phrases.
Yes,
Question.
hello.
I know
Yeah,
Levin.
Our son, our grandson, Benjamin, has apraxia, and I know you said like autism, you always have autism, and we're not upset that he has apraxia, but how close to normal will his language eventually get?
So autism and apraxia aren't always diagnosed together. All of those diagnoses can be separate, and sometimes they can be together. And I know your grandson, and he's made remarkable progress here. And I think that for anyone here, as long as the families are getting and the children are getting the early intervention that they need, that the progress can be unlimited. So it really is varies greatly depending on the kind of.
I'm sorry, I might have misled you. Benjamin just has apraxia, and I just wondered how close, will his speech develop and progress in apraxia?
Okay, got it. A little more specific now. Gotcha. He's made remarkable progress so far, and most children with apraxia will go on with this intensive intervention that they receive, and that happens to be one of the specialties at the Carruth Center. And I know he's getting really great therapy with Brittany. Then there's not any reason to believe that he won't be a verbal communicator like everyone else.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Rice.
Yeah, Rice. Okay, our granddaughter's Joanna Ennis, and to me, she has I think she's been diagnosed with receptive expressive language disorder.
Mhm.
And she, to us, is the life of the party whenever there's a group of people around. And she finds a way to get in the middle of all of that. And she does express herself. And certainly we've noticed a big difference since she's come to the parish school and expressing herself. However, there are times when she's frustrated that people don't understand what she's trying to tell them. And mostly it's other children her age. And then she's 4 years old, and she gets in a bit of a temper tantrum about that. I think mostly some of that's on a continuum of being a 4-year-old and having her inability to be to express, and so we don't know where she is on that. Most of the time, Susan and I don't have a problem dealing with her, but our daughter does. and so we've raised 4 children ourselves, so we just try to take her out of the situation, get her off away from other people. Is that the best way to deal with this? And what do we tell our daughter, that you need to calm down a little bit because 4-year-olds are naturally like that to some degree?
That is such a wonderful question, and trying to figure out, as grandparents, you kind of have the unique perspective of being able to step back a little bit and see kind of like some of that parent-child relationship, and what that might look like, and that kind of thing. And definitely, the intent is always to help, right? And sometimes that doesn't quite get conveyed in the way that you would like. And so, I think it's, I think when you guys are watching her, and you feel like removing her kind of from the situation is helpful to you, and definitely if you're caring for her in the moment, and it seems to be helpful, I would never discourage you to completely do something different with that. But when mom is around, or mom and dad are around, I think it's important to help them feel supported in whatever it is that they're trying to do or manage, and maybe asking, what can I do to help? It seems like you're feeling like this is hard or difficult. What can I do to help in this situation? What would you like me to do? There's also something that we use here at Parish. We use not a curriculum, kind of a program called Conscious Discipline that we've kind of implemented into some of our classrooms. And it's a really great resource for parenting. And we could probably send that out as well as a resource. And the nice thing about Conscious Discipline is that it applies to all children, including children with special needs. But it really talks about the different brain states of what people experience, and the thinking brain, the emotion brain, and the survival brain. And so it could be beneficial in working with Joanna in those moments, as well as being able to figure out how to help support your adult child in that moment. Because funnily enough, all of our brains, child or adult, are all similar in this response, is that when we get triggered, or something triggers us, we jump from our thinking brain back into our emotion brain. And sometimes when it's really triggering, all the way down to our survival brain. But that might, so if mom is, feeling very frustrated and upset and kind of is currently in the emotion brain, then that's definitely a cue for grandparents to not try to provide feedback to the parent in that moment, because it probably will not be heard very well. The parent's not going to be ready for feedback till we're back up in our thinking brain, and that kind of thing. And as well as working with Joanna or with any of your grandchildren, in the middle of a meltdown, it's really hard to reason with that 4-year-old. Nothing makes sense. It's not logical at all. And so it's a great resource. We can definitely add it to our list to send out, but can be they've got videos, like question and answer, blog posts, that you can peruse throughout there. And it can definitely provide some great insight that would be helpful working with both Joanna and mom and dad. Levin, I know Michelle Levin has been, they've been wanting to ask a question for a really long time. So please unmute and ask us.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, yeah. Our grandchild, as well as a lot of other children, I notice, spend a lot of time with these handheld computers.
Mm-hmm.
And, even our grandchild gets angry if you try to take it away from him. And I just wonder what the long-term effects, we grew up, we didn't have any of this stuff. And when I raised my children, we really didn't have this much. And I was wondering what's going to happen. Is there any long-term studies that show, is this good for the child, bad for the child, or what?
It's like screen time. That is a really great question. Definitely, we definitely, as professionals, encourage parents to limit screen time, because I think there can definitely be a multitude of effects that come from having an excessive amount of screen time. And so, definitely, like, as professionals and as providers that work with parents of children with special needs, we definitely encourage, setting a limit on how much a child engages in screen time. that being said, as grandparents, again, it's like, okay, well, we want to do everything we can to help our grandchild. But at the same time, we also have to take into consideration our adult child and what is it that they're trying to do at the moment. A lot of parents in this day and age are very guilty of using electronic devices or screen time as a babysitter, right? Like, I know I am. Like, sometimes I have to get dinner done. And so it's like, all right, kids, turn the TV on and watch a show so that I can focus on dinner. And so, although it's definitely recommended to limit screen time, as grandparents, I think it's important to, really maybe ask the parent, like, what, if we're seeing a lot of screen time, what can we do to help support? Because maybe that's an indicator that, they're needing, they're needing to do other things. And so, this is the only thing that will keep the child occupied or keep the child from melting down. Or so as a grandparent, that would be an indication that maybe, okay, what can we do to provide some of that practical support so the parent is not feeling the need to use that as much. Is that helpful?
Well, yeah, but I was just
Okay.
wondering, is there any studies that show that this increased screen time is either helpful or detrimental? I know I have a nephew that just grew up in front of a computer.
Mhm.
He's like now he has a job working in a computer, but his social activities are zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some research out there. I don't have any off the top of my head. Mimi, I don't know if you do.
You know who does, and I don't know the research either, but and we'll put this in the resource link. We had a speaker at our luncheon, not this year, but last year, named Jordan Shapiro.
Oh, that's right.
His whole talk was on this. And so I'm going to also put the link to his book in our resources. And I'm sure he has a website as well, and probably information in little chunks. But he's definitely had his finger on the pulse and knows the research. So I'll include that in the link.
Name is Jordan what?
Shapiro.
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 Okay, yeah, maybe I could
Google it.
Google it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're out of time, but I'm more than willing to stay, Lily.
Yeah, I can too.
I've got another 30 minutes that I can dedicate to this. But I'm going to need to leave and come right back. So give me just a second, and maybe this next question's for Lily, and I'll jump in when I get back. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Right back.
I saw Tel Camp had another question. I saw hand raised.
Well, if the mergees want to, I've already asked, let them ask their question.
Okay.
Who? Us?
Either, whatever.
We just wanted to say hello.
Hello.
We're Jim and Kathy Cleary, our son, John Connor. Grandson.
Oh, okay.
Connor. And we're new. Our family is new to Parish this year. And we just wanted to say how grateful we are that he has this opportunity to be there.
Well, welcome. And John Connor is, he seems like a pretty fun kid. I've only interacted with a couple times, but
Something else.
welcome so much. And thank you for that.
Thank you for this.
All right. Vicki Stringer. Oh, or Murdy. I see a couple hands up. Murdy, did you have a question? Sushma?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sushma and his Gopal. We are the grandparents of Vinay Mahajanam. Yes, he's been in Parish since quite some time.
Mhm.
And firstly, we want to just thank you for being there for him, because there was a time when he was not speaking at all, and now he speaks very fluently. But every year, as the time passes, we find that a fresh challenge is always coming up.
Mhm.
With the way he is in school. And I know already my daughter keeps informing me what is happening and all that. What way can we help Because sometimes we find that he's very good in some activities and sometimes he just doesn't listen, or sometimes he keeps obsessing about the same thing. What way can we help? Sometimes I feel helpless.
Yeah, yeah. And ideas for helping in kind of interacting with him, or ideas for helping your daughter? What?
Helping my grandson when we are
Okay.
there. And
Okay.
no, daughter's anyway, she's in touch with you all and she's follows
Okay.
what
Okay. Okay. So kind of helping him when you're there with him and interacting with him.
he likes us a lot and he wants us to be with him all the time, which we cannot. We have another child too, so sometimes he gets very upset if we leave him and deal with all this.
Yeah. I think he would, so one idea would be maybe those like rituals or routines. So kind of creating some type of ritual that you guys can do upon greeting each other and then upon saying goodbye. A specific ritual that's done every time helps create a sense of predictability for him, where he it might give him a sense of like, okay, this is ending, but I know I will have this again when they come back. Another thought too is, something that we teach our staff, our parents here, is kind of acknowledging and accepting that feeling. Oh, you seem really disappointed. You want us to stay longer. We can, and then kind of, so identifying that feeling and accepting it, identifying that intention, what is it that that child is wanting, and then giving like a couple of choices, it like provide a sense of control. We can talk, on the phone or via FaceTime tomorrow. So maybe giving two choices where you can kind of resume that connection, even though you might not be coming back for a little while, that to remind him that he can still have some of that connection, and here are two choices to do so. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and anything that you want to ask? No, and right now he seems to be, I don't know, whatever troubles he's having, but what do you think his future will be like? Will he be able to come to a normal life? This big question, I know.
That is a really big question. And sometimes we wish we had a crystal ball here at Parish, because a lot of times our parents, your adult children are wanting to know the answer to those questions as well. And unfortunately, we can't always give a, we don't know. Some children make so much progression in 1 year, and some children it takes longer. And so we can only say to continue with the recommendations of your professionals and the teachers and the therapists that are currently working with your child, and those goals, and that, continuing with those recommendations, and continuing with the strategies that are being suggested, and then paying attention to the progress that has been made. I think sometimes that's probably the hardest part, is we want to know the answer to that question. And sometimes we get lost in always seeing how far away we still are. And so I really think it's important to continue with everything that's being done, and then also paying attention to noticing where they were and how far they've come.
And stay open to unconventional paths.
Yes.
Stay open to unconventional paths and focus on, is he happy? And supporting him through those paths. And I think that will get you far. So, maybe he is not go to the alma mater where everyone in the family went to, but maybe he's going to find this special interest that's going to lead him down a career path that's different, but equally as fulfilling. So just
Yes.
keep open-minded about it.
Yes.
And anyway, just this is the first opportunity we are having to interact with you all. We just want to thank you all because there was a point of time when I thought he would never speak, and he's now speaking.
Yeah.
Thanks to you all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Vinay. I love his insight and his word. I've seen Vinay off and on over his years here at Parish. And yeah, he is such a fantastic kid, and he really has some good insight.
Smile on everybody's face.
I'm sorry.
He loves to keep everybody happy.
I
make
know.
everybody smile. So his actions
Yes.
are different from others.
Yes, Vinay works, he's working really hard. And he has, this great desire for relationships and social connections. And, I love how hard he's working to try and figure things out. So.
And I think, kind of more global, everybody's grandchild here, they're not trying to let you down. They're doing the best.
Yeah.
And so kind of meet them where they are and go from there.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We had a question come in the chat about after 5th grade, where do kids go to school? What kinds of school? And that is, unfortunately, my answer is everywhere. So some of our kids will mainstream into public school with supports. Some of our kids will continue and mainstream into a private school with supports. And some of our kids will still need a small environment and need a special needs school. So it really is across the gamut, but I do know that once your grandchild is in upper elementary, they will start having those conversations with you. Or with your adult child, so that they have plenty of time to look at all the different options that are out there. And we're very fortunate in Houston that we do have a good amount of options compared to many other cities.
I know earlier you had your hand raised. Was there another question, or has it been answered?
1 second. Okay. Since Grace, since our granddaughter is so young, and this diagnosis just was devastating to her parents and to all of us. And the hard part, one of the hardest parts is that when they go to her parents go to doctor's appointments or when they come back, they've never been to a doctor's appointment where it wasn't just heartbreaking. And how do you, we live 3 hours away, and so we're not there to go give them a hug. We help as much as we can. And, but how do you respond when they give you the latest report and without just picking up the phone and bawling? I don't, it's hard to find the words that are oh, okay. But anyway, do you have any advice on, how to navigate, those really hard times when you're so incredibly sad for your adult children. And it's very hard to watch.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part, being, again, grandparents are parents, right? And so it's not only taking care of that grandchild but it's taking care of your actual child through this. And that's a really tough situation. And, as parents, we're always wanting to fix things for our children, or to keep them from hurting or having pain, and part of being parents is that realization that unfortunately we can't. And that's really tough, and we can't stop these bad things from happening to them or from them going through them, and then just trying to figure out how to support them through them. And I think it's okay to be authentic and say, wow, like this is really, I can tell this is really hard for you. This is really difficult. And even saying, I don't even quite know what the right words are to say and do. But I can definitely hear that this is really hard for you. And that I'm here, like and I know it's hard when you can't be there to give that emotional support in those physical ways. But just saying, I'm here on the phone, if you need me, I am here. And I know this is hard, and I will help you do this. So just being able to try and communicate that message to them.
And it's okay to grieve. And it's okay to get through the grief and then have to grieve again.
Yeah.
And that kind of happens often. And I would just add to what Lily said that, our first inclination when our grandchild, our child gets a diagnosis is to go online and start doing research. And while that's valuable, you do have to remember that every child diagnosed with any of these disorders is a completely different child. And they're still the same child before they had the label than they are right now with the label. And so what I'll often say to parents when I'm counseling them through a big diagnosis is, exactly that. It's okay to grieve. Now let's get to work. Now let's build your army. Your army for your child and your grandchild is who's going to make the biggest difference in their life right now, and who's going to help you answer questions and feel supported. And it's going to be harder for them to accomplish these goals, but we're going to take joy in the small successes that they're going to have to get there. And every small success, every time a therapist tells a child or a teacher tells a parent that they've done something, that's a small success to be rejoiced.
Helping notice those small successes that you see in your child. A lot of times, so something I used to tell working with parents is that good parents, when their child is struggling, take all the blame. And when their child is doing well, they give all the credit to their child. And so as grandparents, something that you can do to kind of help support them with that is through this journey, when their child is making those steps, and when your grandchild's making those steps and making that progress, and we're seeing improvement, really helping to recognize the parent in their role, your adult child in their role through that. Because yes, the child is doing a lot to, overcome their challenges, but the adult parent is going to have a hard time accepting credit for that. So that's something as a grandparent that you can do, is help them recognize how their child's success is also their own, that they are a part of that, and it's not all their child on their own. That is the child with special needs that has gone through that. The parent has been a very big journey in helping that child get to where they are.